This show brought to you by Circle of Seven Productions, www.cosproductions.com. Please be sure to subscribe and welcome to our circle.
Hello, everybody. This is Patricia W. Fischer for Readers Entertainment Radio. We're going a day later just because of general craziness and summertime chaos on my end. We are going to debut a wonderful author today, Holly Castillo, and she is calling in just a second. But let me tell you a little bit about Holly. She is somebody who I am so excited to introduce because Holly is super focused and an amazing writer. So let me give you a little intro on Holly. So she grew up in a small town of Dripping Springs, Texas, which, if anybody knows Texas, is near Austin, south of Austin. And during many summer days, she spent racing her horse bareback, and then finding a great shade tree and taking a nap in the back of her horse. Now, understand that in Texas in the summer, the best parking spot isn't necessarily in the very front of the parking lot. It's under where the tree is. So we can totally relate to that with that big shade tree. Holly's love for writing began from the moment she knew how to put words to paper, and she hasn't stopped since. And she's found true love in her own life, and romance has always been a passion to her. Today, Holly finds herself quite content at home, nestled in a small community just south of San Antonio, and with her husband and 2 children on the family's 80-acre ranch, surrounded by cattle during the day and the howling coyotes at night. Holly has inspiration just coming out of her ears, basically. So this is her first book we're going to talk about today, Texas Conquest by Tule Publishing. And Holly, are you there?
Yes.
Yay, Holly. So glad to hear your voice. So tell me, what is the first thing you remember writing? You say that you could as soon as you could put words to paper, you were writing. But what is the first thing you remember, like, really writing?
Well, there's a couple of things that stand out to me, but the very first thing I can remember writing was all about snow, cabin in the snow. And, of course, you know, living in Texas and in South Texas, snow is not something we see that often. And so it was totally using my imagination. I was about 6 years old when I wrote this. And it ended up being a 10-page long story about a cabin in the snow. And
wow.
That was my first experience with writing. And then when I was 10 years old, my little brother was really into having books read to him before he went to bed at night. And I created Little Willie the Owl. And I wrote these stories for him that were all about Little Willie's first day at school, or Little Willie goes to the doctor, or, you know, just these short stories that he could get to read before he went to bed at night. And so I was 10, he was 4, so my mom was reading the books to him. And he would always be coming up to me the next day, okay, when are you going to write me the next one? When are you going to write me the next one? And so I had a whole, at least 15 different Little Willie the Owl stories that I wrote when I was 10 years old. So those are
wow. Do you still have them?
My mom does.
Do you still have the book? Oh, wow. You know, that might be something you might want to consider putting together. It sounds pretty cute.
It was a lot of fun to write back then. I haven't looked at them. It's been so long, and so I have no idea what my writing was like back then. But it's something that I'm tempted to reconsider, you know, go back and evaluate it and see if it's something to put to paper again.
Well, what's fun about that is you know, we can all look back on stuff we've written and, of course, cringe because we thought we were truly fantastic when we were writing it. But I think the point would be that we did it at all. You know,
yeah.
we sat down and we wrote it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge part for anyone is completing that piece of work that you're on, or, you know, just being able to finish a chapter and being able to say, yes, I did it. Those are the little successes that lead up to the big success.
Exactly. So, you know, it's a stretch from writing the short stories for your brother and then deciding to sit down and write a book and get it edited and put it out there and submit it. for consideration. What happened between, little Willie goes to the doctor and now we're at your debut book?
Well, I did. I never stopped writing. I was continuously just experimenting with different types of writing. I've always had a love for romance novels, and so I actually wrote a Victorian romance novel when I was 16, and I didn't know the parameters around what it would be like to write one of those books, and it ended up being 450 pages, single-spaced, 12-point font. It was famous. But it was, one of those things that got me really into writing about romance.
Right. Hey, Holly, if you have your microphone on your computer, go ahead and mute that.
Okay. Is that better?
I think I'm getting some bounce back. Oh, yeah, that's much better. Okay, now I can really hear you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, good. So I did a lot of writing all through my youth. And then when I grew up and moved out on my own, life takes its course, and my writing kind of took a back seat. And it wasn't until here recently, about a couple of years ago, that I started dabbling in my writing again. And I ended up writing Texas Conquest, and I wanted to see, well, what would someone else think about it? Is there any chance that it has a potential of being a book that someone else would want to read? And so I started going to different workshops and studying as much as I could online to learn about how to make a pitch, how to write your query letter, and I just started firing it off to different agents and editors and seeing how that went. And I was very, very fortunate to get to go to the RWA conference that we had this past year in San Diego. And I met an editor there who was interested in the Texas Conquest story and the subsequent stories to Texas Conquest. And then in August of last year, I got to pitch to Tule Publishing at one of our chapter meetings. And it just so happened that right around Christmas of last year, I got an offer from both editors to take on my Conquest books. And it was the most ecstatic Christmas I've ever had. And in January, I signed. Yeah, it was awesome. And in January, I signed with Tule Publishing.
How wonderful. Well, I know that Tule is glad to have you because I don't know, you guys have to read Holly's book because she just makes these beautiful sweeping images and you will love it. So please pick it up. So tell me, now that we've led up to this, tell me a little bit about Texas Conquest. It's a historical romance set in Texas before the fall of the Alamo.
Yeah,
correct?
It's a unique time period because it's when the Texas Revolution has really, it's starting to get to its boiling point. And at that stage, the Mexican military occupied the Alamo, and the Texan Army recognized that the Alamo was a strategic point to take. And they camped on the opposite side of the San Antonio River, and they were ready at a moment's notice to go on the attack to kick the Mexican army out of the Alamo and take it over on their own. So it's what I call the first battle of the Alamo that most people don't know about. And it's fascinating because there were true stories of the spying that went on between the two camps, between the Mexican army camp and the Texan army camp, and just the different intel that they would be sharing back and forth. And so Texas Conquest takes that story and adds a little bit of a twist to it in that it is the middle daughter of a family that has been raised to respect the Mexican military, who has decided that she wants to fight for freedom for Texas, and she becomes a Texan spy. And so she risks everything, alienation from her family, her friends, people that she has respected and loved for her entire life. She risked everything to take this information and supplies across the San Antonio River to the Texans on the other side at night, when it's the most risky, I should say, because of the danger, because they have the Mexican patrol that's going back and forth, and they have all sorts of different elemental dangers that they have to fight through. And she ends up encountering a soldier for the Mexican army. He actually ends up saving her life at one point, and she falls in love with him until she realizes he's a soldier for the Mexican army. And so she then has this new battle going on in her heart of what are her real priorities and what does she need to fight for. And in a twist, it turns out that Lorenzo, the hero of the story, also is fighting his own demons, and the two of them are forced into an awkward situation where they have to work together, and ultimately it's to save the city of San Antonio. And that's Texas Conquest in a nutshell.
Wow. And, you like you said, there's a lot of people that don't realize that this, the Alamo wasn't, the Texas Army didn't have the Alamo the whole time. And this is one of those things that it's just assumed that's the way it was. And so this is pre-Battle of the Alamo, or like you're saying, the first battle of it. And you knew people that had worked downtown and had seen, like, some of the underground tunnels and everything?
Yes, I was very fortunate to have a job. I was right on the Riverwalk, and we were literally blocks from the Alamo. And this complex that I worked in had historical buildings dating all the way back to the 1800s, and there were tunnels and passageways that connected the buildings to each other. And when they had been fixing this area up to make it suitable for it to be office spaces, they had discovered an old Spanish saddle that dated back to the time of the Revolution, and they had even found equipment and supplies that would have belonged to a soldier in the Revolution. And so these tunnels weren't necessarily popular to use, but I loved them, and so I was always cutting through them whenever I got the chance. And just walking through these passageways, it just struck me, who was here before me? Who touched this wall before me? What lives have been in this spot at some previous time, or what were they going through? And that's what really spurred my desire to learn about the Texas Revolution and understand it in a much better and deeper way.
Well, and for those listening that don't know the way the downtown San Antonio is set up, the Alamo is in the middle of San Antonio. I mean, they didn't move it. It's gone nowhere. The city's built up around it. So you can be in an office building and look out your window, and there's the Alamo where the battle was fought. Now, it's not the full Alamo because that has obviously changed, but it's basically the core buildings that were left. And so you can, it's right there in the middle of downtown. So to be able to walk these hallways or these passageways, that's a pretty unique experience. And you're right, it does have a certain amount of almost like ghosts are around you to walk through something like that.
Yes, you do feel it. You feel a presence. You feel a sense of being in another time and another place, because a lot of these tunnels, there hadn't been much done to them. So there was still a lot of just that feeling of what all happened here? What happened that impacted all these different people and all these different lives? And it was just an amazing experience to have.
Wow. So if you're just tuning in, we are a day late on Readers Entertainment Radio, but today we are talking to an amazing debut author, Holly Castillo, who's got her first book, Texas Conquest, a beautiful historical romance set in the 1830s, right before Texas was starting to fight for its independence from Mexico. And as she said, this is basically a very little-known battle that was fought at the Alamo when the Mexican army actually was in occupation of it. So, Holly, you've said you've got 2-3 other books in the series, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what are the release dates on those, and do you have titles for those yet?
I do. So Texas Desire is the second book, and it will be coming out August 1st.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Texas
coming up.
Yeah, really, really quick. Texas Heat is the third book, and it will be coming out September 17th.
Okay.
And then there will be a Christmas story. It's going to be called Texas Christmas, and it will be coming out sometime this fall.
Okay, great. All right. So with all this, I know you've done a lot of research and reading and discussion with people about writing novels and et cetera, and writing romance. What is the absolute worst advice you've ever gotten about the craft of writing, marketing, anything? What is the worst advice?
The worst advice I got was to look at what is selling now and try to write a book for that genre. That was the worst advice I ever got. And it was, look at, this is the area that's selling right now. This is what's hot. You need to write for that. And then it turns out a few months later, nope, that's no longer hot anymore. It's just over here. And I just spent 3 months working on this thing that was for this hot at the moment. And so it really, it taught me a lesson at the same time of, if I really write what I'm passionate about and what I have a desire to write about, then there's going to be someone out there who's going to see it and see the potential in it that I do. And that's what has driven me to follow this path with the more Western style of historical romance. And I was told by several different editors and agents this just is the in thing right now. And I beg to differ with them.
Right. Well, and again, I think if you're truly passionate about what you're writing, it comes through in the words. And it's just you can't teach that. It's either you love what you're writing or you don't. I mean, it just is what it is. So, what was the very best advice you ever got on this process?
Never give up. Always keep pursuing every avenue, everything that you want to do and dream of doing. Never give it up. And that is true of anything you do in life that you really want. But you set back sometimes when you're writing and have those days that you really doubt, okay, is this really the right thing to do? And just to never give up and follow that passion, it does lead to good things. And having that confidence in yourself. And so just sticking to it, that was the best advice I ever got. Right.
And do you think being part of a writer's community helps you with that momentum?
Oh, tremendously. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know what I would do without the Sarah group, the San Antonio Romance Authors. I don't know what I would do without the support network of the encouragement and the constant lifting up. And, I love that we have during our meetings here's what's gone really, really good, and here's what's gone kind of crappy this month. And getting to voice those things and have everybody support you. And if it's something that's gone, a little bit not exactly the way you wanted it to, and everybody going, oh, that happened to me. Oh, don't worry about it. You'll get through that. And to know that you're not alone. it's terrific to have that support network.
Yeah. And it makes you kind of feel like you're not thinking, why am I doing this again? I mean, you just get to walk into a room of people who are doing it, and you go, oh, this is why. We're all doing this. So it helps a lot. So you've written historicals, and this is your first series, which is super amazing. You feel like this is your niche, or do you feel like you'll also write other genres as well at some point?
I definitely have interest in other genres. My second love is young adult historical romance.
Okay. Oh, wow.
I have a manuscript that I'll be submitting over to Chule Publishing that I wrote last year, and it's based in the 1920s when the discovery in South America was just picking up on all of the Mayan ruins. And so it's about this teenage boy and girl who are stuck in this awkward situation of one of them is a treasure hunter, the other one is more of a scholastic, let's preserve things, and they're on this great adventure to try to discover the next Mayan ruin. And kind of an Indiana Jones type of feel to it. And
like young Indiana Jones, sure. Mm-hmm.
So that's my next favorite thing. Other than historical romance, that would be my next favorite is the young adult historical romance.
Okay. So what? So your kids are how old again?
My son is 14, and my daughter is 9.
So they're getting that you've written this book and it's out there. What is their take on it?
My son is ecstatic. He's actually reading my book right now, and his only feedback to me is, "Mom, do they have to kiss?" That's been his main feedback to me. Everything else is like, "I'm enjoying it, Mom. It's great, but do they really have to kiss?" Well, that's why it's called a romance. And he's like, "Okay, fine. I'll just ignore that." And my daughter is very eager to read it. And they both have told their entire school about me being a published author now. And we were very fortunate in that some of my son's teachers came to the launch of the book. And it's been a very exciting thing for them as well. And they've enjoyed bragging about it to their friends and to their teachers. And I had to have several books set aside for them to be able to take into school with them to give to their teachers.
Well, did they get extra credit if they brought a signed book?
No, they didn't. That was the rotten part of it.
Maybe next time you'll say, okay, but do you get extra credit?
Yes. Next time I'll push for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this would be something really cool that, your son's 14 and he's in that age where history may not be so exciting. And this is a part of history that, like I said, even in Texas, when everyone takes Texas history 7th grade, this is never mentioned. So this is one of those things that would be really cool for people to know about in general.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a walk onto the Alamo and we owned it. I mean, the Texas Army owned it. They had to fight for it several times.
Right.
Yeah. So when you go to the Alamo now, do you see it differently?
Oh, I do. I see it from so many different perspectives of having researched it. But I do. I look at the city of San Antonio differently now because in my research I discovered the specific streets that they actually dug trenches in to be fighting this battle to take the Alamo away from the Mexican army. And so those streets exist today. And so when you're driving around downtown, you get that whole image of, well, this is where this went down. This is where this person was shot. This is where there was a major victory and advancement in this corner. It's you look at the entire city and the Alamo differently when you picture it from the standpoint of them winning it from the Mexican army.
Right, right. And then what was the time difference between your book and the Fall of the Alamo that we know so much about?
So when the Texans took the Alamo, that was in December of 1835. And then
so about 4 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
It was between 3 and 4 months, because it was in March of 1836 that Santa Anna came. And an interesting fact is that the army that the Texans kicked out of the Alamo was led by General Coss. General Coss was Santa Anna's brother-in-law. And so that is one of the reasons why Santa Anna was so vicious against the Alamo when he came to take it back, was because he felt like there had been a slight to the family by them ousting General Coss.
Wow. Well, we only have a few seconds left, but I wanted to thank Holly Castillo for coming to talk to us about her book, Texas Conquest, out now. Pick it up.
Thanks so much, Patricia. I've had a blast.
Oh, thank you, sweetie.
This show brought to you by Circle of Seven Productions, www.cosproductions.com. Please be sure